Hello everyone and welcome to our quilting project of the month for January 2017. This is a wallet design all done in the hoop. It was designed for you by Rita Gizzard and presented by myself, Mark Garretts. I'm a National Floriani educator. As I always like to do before we get started, I like to show you a picture of what the finished project is going to look like, so as we go through the steps you have a good idea of where we're headed. So let's go ahead and get started with this month's software section of the project. And if you haven't done it already, once you've opened your software, you want to come up to this icon right here and click the new page icon, so you get a new page that's going to look something like this. And the next thing we're going to do is get our screen set up the same so that yours looks similar to mine, so it makes it easier to follow along. So what you want to do is come up to your ruler bar here, and I want you to right click on the ruler bar. Now when I tell you to right click, that obviously means a right click, but if I just say click, that means a left click. So what you want to have selected is you want to be in inches mode, you want show grid to be selected, and you want snap to grid to be selected. And if those are not, then you want to select them and then reopen this little window, and then finally come back down here to grid settings and click it. And what you want to do is you want to have your horizontal and your vertical grid spacing set to 0.25 or 1/4 of an inch. And for your grid major, you want it set every 15 lines. So you want 15 in the horizontal and the vertical. And once you've got those set, go ahead and click OK to lock in those settings. Now the next thing we need to do is we are going to kind of zoom in or out. And the idea is you want to see these two grids, major grid sections here, kind of at the top of the screen, because we're going to start laying in some stitches here, and you want to just be able to make sure you can see the top of this. Now for mine, I've set my zoom to 90% to make that happen. Depending on your screen and your computer settings, you may have to change this a little bit so you can see this. And it's not a bad idea to see these bottom two here as well, but the main thing is to see these. Now 0, 0 is right here, so this is important. This wants to be in the center of your screen, and we're going to start working up in here. So the next thing we need to do is we need to come down here and select our thread chart. So that we do here with our thread chart selector. So you want to click that, and you want to select Floriani Cotton. And the reason we're doing that is just because it has a limited selection of colors and it's a little bit easier to choose them. We're not suggesting that you stitch this out with that thread. You can if you want, but this is just simply to make it easy to select our thread colors. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to put in our section for the zipper. Now in the picture that you saw, you couldn't see the zipper, but there's a zipper section in the wallet as well as a pocket side, and we're going to put in our placement guides for the zipper. So to do that, the first thing we're going to do is come up here to our run stitch icon and click it. Then we're going to come over here to our properties box, and we are going to change the stitch length to 4 millimeters. So we're going to change that to 4, and then we're going to click apply. And the next thing we're going to do is come down and select a thread color to work with. And what you want to do is come here and click this pink color right here. So now what we draw is going to be in that pink color, and we're going to start putting in our sections. Before I do that, I'm going to click on 3D here, because that's going to make this pink color a little bit easier to see. Now you can do this at home or not, it's totally up to you, but I'm doing it so that you can see this a little bit easier on your screen. So we're going to start clicking in various points to put in these stitches, and in your printed instructions there's a picture that shows you where these points are, and it's important that you click them in the proper order. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down, not right here, but we're going to come down 2 squares over and 2 grid squares in, and we're going to start clicking right here. This is our first point. So we're going to go ahead and click. Now you don't have to be precise about getting on that intersection of those 2 grid lines, because that's what our snap to grid section is going to do for us. Our next one, point number 2, is up here, so you're one above and straight up. So we're going to click right there. Then we're going to come back down to our grid major line for point number 3, and then we're going to come all the way over on our grid major line to 2 in from this one, and we are going to click right here for point number 4. Then we're going to come up 1 square to point number 5, and then we're going to come all the way down here. So we're going to come right down to, we want to be 2, 4, and 5 down from the top. So we're going to click right here for point number 6, and then we're going to come back up 1 for point number 7, and then we are going to come all the way back over here for point number 8, and then come down here for point number 9, and then back up to this intersection right here for point number 10, all the way out to this grid major line for point number 11, and then finally all the way back over here to this grid major line straight across for point number 12, and that enters all of our stitch lines in. And when we're done doing that, we're going to click a right click on our mouse to lock in those stitch lines. So what you're going to end up with is a grid of stitches that looks like this. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in a basting stitch for the zipper to tack the zipper down. So run stitch should already be selected, but if it's not, go ahead and click it to select it. Then we're going to come over to our properties box, and we're going to change from a single run into a bean stitch, leave the number of bean repeats at 3, and then we're going to change our stitch length to 3 from 4 and click apply. Then we're going to select a new color for this so that the machine stops and changes colors, and we're going to use this light blue color right here. So come down to your palette and click that light blue color, and then we're going to start putting in our stitches. And basically we're going to kind of make a open rectangle right around here. So we're going to start right up in here in this intersection, and you're going to click, and you're going to come almost all the way over to the other side, but we're going to stop 1 square short. So right in here and click. Then you're going to come down to this square right here, matching this thread line, and click, and then come back over to this side right here and click, and then right click to lock those blue stitches in. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a set of stitches to stitch the fabric to our zipper, as well as then tack that fabric down or top stitch that fabric down. So we're going to come over to our properties box first, and if not already selected, make sure that you're in the run stitch, and come over here to your properties, and we're going to change from a bean back to a single run. We're going to tighten up our stitch length from 3 to 2.5. So go ahead and type in a 2.5 over the 3 and click apply, and we're going to get a thread color here. So we're going to come down and we're going to get this gray. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a set of stitches. So for each stitch line, we're going to create a set of stitches going one direction and then back the other direction in a different thread color. So we're going to start over here, and again, in your printed instructions, you've got a diagram showing you where these points to click are. But you're going to start right here at the end of this long pink thread here and click, and you're going to come down to the end of it and click, and then you're going to right click to put that stitch in. The next thing we're going to do is go and change our thread color. So we're going to change to this light brown right here. So go ahead and click that light brown, and then we're going to basically do the opposite. So we're going to start at the opposite end down here and click, and come back up to the top here and click, and then we're going to right click to lock that one in. We're going to repeat that with this one over here. So we're going to go back to our gray color. We're going to start at the top and come all the way down and click, then right click to lock those stitches in. Come back and select the brown one more time, and again at the bottom of that one, and then up at the top and right click. Go back to our gray. Now we're going to put in our stitch lines that go across here. So you're going to come to this major grid intersection right here and click, and you're going to come over to the other one and click, and then right click to lock that in. Again, go back to the brown, and we're going to go backwards one more time. So start at the end and come back and right click. One more time for the bottom, go back to gray. So we're going to start right here and click, and we're going to come all the way over to the end here and click, and then right click to lock that in. One more time, go back to our brown and click at the end of where we ended and come back to the beginning and right click to lock those sets of stitches in. So the next thing we need to do is come over to our sequence view, and we're going to select the second to last item, which is this one right here, and it's called charcoal, and we are going to then click the fourth to last item, which is the next charcoal above it, while holding down the control key. So holding down control allows us to select both of those. Then we're going to come over into our properties box and click our transform tab, and we want to make sure that we are in inches mode again, and again that maintain aspect ratio is unchecked. We're going to increase the width of this from 7.5 to 7.75. So I'm going to put in 7.75, and I'm going to decrease the height to 0.55. So I'm going to pin 0.55 and click apply to lock those changes in. And then in the sequence view, we're going to come over here and click on our last item, and then the third to last item, holding down control, so that gets these two items here selected. And once again, we're going to come back to our properties box, click the transform tab, and we're going to increase our width one more time to 7.75. So 7.75, and we're going to decrease our height this time to 0.7. So I'm going to come in here and type in 0.7 and click apply to lock those changes in. And so that creates the stitches that we need for our zipper section, and now we're going to move on to our pocket section. So for the pocket section, the important thing is to scroll your screen down if necessary so you can see the center of it. So you want to be kind of one major grid intersection down from where we were working, and it's important that you're on the 0 line here. So you're going to be on 0 and then 0, and you want to be able to see this area in here so we can work on it. Now with my screen I didn't have to scroll it, but you may have to do that using the arrow key down here to scroll your screen down. Now I should tell you before we get into this that we're going to create another set of stitches in here that's going to be the stitches for our pocket section. That's actually going to end up being a separate piece of fabric, but we're going to do both the zipper section and the pocket section in the hoop at the same time, just to save some loading of designs and to save some hooping and material. So we're just going to do this in the same hooping, but it's not actually physically going to be connected to this top section that we created. But it is important that you get it in the right orientation here so the stitches don't overlap, and later when we put the fabric down you'll see that having this 0 line here in the right place was important. So the first thing we want to do is we want to come up here and we want to select our run stitch one more time, and we're going to go over to our properties and we're going to increase our stitch length to 4. So I'm going to type in a 4 and click apply, and then I'm going to come back down and I'm going to get this pink color again. Now I can select it from here or I can select it from here because it's already in our design. So I'm going to go ahead and this time select it from that palette, and we're going to basically create an S shape of stitches around our center line here. So we're going to start one box over up and to the left of our grid intersection here. So we're going to start right here, and again remember that snap to grid is on, so getting absolutely close to this point isn't critical. So anywhere in there is going to do it. So go ahead and left click to lock that one in. You're going to come basically all the way across to the same side on the opposite side of our next grid major line. So go ahead and click that. Then we're going to come down one below it and click, and then we're going to go back over here to this side and click. Again, come back down 2 boxes and click, and then come back over here 2 boxes and click, and then go ahead and right click to lock that set of stitches in. And when I said one below, I didn't mean one below this click point here, I meant one below the grid intersection here, and I just clicked by accident, so I'm gonna press escape, and that gets rid of what I just did. So that's another shortcut that you can use very effectively. And should you click in the wrong point, then another keyboard shortcut is a backspace key. The backspace key eliminates the last point that you clicked without making you start over again. So once you've created these stitches, come over to your select icon and click select to select them, and then we are actually going to drag them up about 1/8 of an inch. So they're going to, this line is going to end up halfway between these two grid lines here. So that's a nice way to look at it. Make sure before you click and drag that you see that hand icon. So click these sets of stitches and move them up just about halfway between the grid lines there. So right there is good. And when you've done that, we are going to create our next set of stitches, which is the lines that are going to sew our pockets to the lining. So what we're going to do is come back and select our Run Stitch tool one more time. We're going to come back to our Properties box. We're going to change our stitch length to 2.5. And we are going to click Apply, and then we're going to get our gray color one more time. Now again, it's already here in our palette, so I'm going to go ahead and click that in our Design Colors palette to get the same gray color. And what we're going to do is we're going to create some lines of stitching. So we're going to create 3 lines of stitching. So we're going to start our first line right over here, lined up with this, but we're going to come down 1, 2, 3 grids kind of below this line here. So count down 1, 2, and then the third grid below that stitch line is where we're going to start our stitching. And we're going to go ahead and start on this side, and we are going to click, and we're going to come all the way over to the other side, lining it up, and we are going to click, and then we're going to right click to lock those stitches in. What we need to do now is we need to change our thread color one more time, and this time we're going to change to black. And so what we're going to do is come down here and get the black from our palette, and now we're going to start here, and we are going to click back the other way. So we're going to come to this intersection right here and click, and come over here and click, and right click to lock that in. Then we're going to go back to our gray color. So I'm going to select gray, and this time we're going to put this line of stitching in right here. So I'm going to start over here on the right. I'm going to click. I'm going to come all the way over here to the left and click and right click to put those stitch lines in. So that is going to get our stitch lines in for our pockets. To tack our pockets down on the what will actually end up being the bottom of the pockets. It's going to look like the top for now. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a line to divide our pockets in half. So it's kind of a seam line to separate our pockets in half. So if not already done, go ahead and click the Run Stitch. We're going to click the black color one more time. And this time we are going to start right here at the intersection of our grid major lines. So we're going to come right here and click, and we're going to come all the way down to the last or the next intersection of our grid major right here and click, and then right click to end it, and that is going to put in our seam line for that. What we need to do now is we need to go over to our sequence view, and we need to come over and we need to click our second to last item, which is right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a copy of that. So what you want to do is come up to your copy icon and click copy, and then click paste to put in a second copy of that. And then in our sequence view, we are going to click the last item, which is already selected, so you probably don't have to click that. Then we're going to skip one and select the next 4 items up. So we're going to hold down our Control key and click 1, 2, 3, 4 to select all those items. And then the next thing we're going to do is we are going to transform their width down to 7.75. So we're going to come over to our transform, and we are going to change our width down to 7.75 inches, and we are going to click apply, and that's all we need to do. So that completes the first section of our software project. We're actually going to make a second file for the second part of it, but first we need to save this one. So we're going to come up here to click File, and then I'm going to click Save As, and you're going to go to your January 2017 project folder, and I'll show you where that is here. It's under C. Floriani Designs MDQ Project, January 2017 folder, and you're going to give it a name. And I'm going to call this Wallet Insider. I'm going to actually call it Inside Wallet. So I'm going to type in Inside Wallet. And I am going to then first save it in the WAF format. So I'm going to click Save. And then you want to do a File Save As one more time. So File Save As. And now we need to save it in our machine format. So for example, if I had a baby lock or a brother machine, I would save it in my PES version 9 format, and it would change the extension to PES and click Save, and now I've saved that machine file. So now we're going to create our wallet front section. So what you want to do is come up here to the upper left hand corner and click the new page icon, so we have a new page to work on. And we want to make sure that we zoom out enough so that we can see these 4 major grid quadrants here, and we want to see a little bit extra, so we want to see at least about a ½ inch around each side, and don't forget our minor grid lines here are at a ¼ inch. So what I'm going to do is zoom out. Now your zoom percentage may be a little bit different, but I'm going to type in 90 because I know that works for my screen, but you may have to play with a number, 75, whatever works for you. So again, you can see these 4 major grid quadrants, and you want to make sure you can see at least a ¼ inch around each side here, because that's where we're going to start putting in our stitches. So to put in our stitches, the first thing we're going to do is come up here to our Artwork Shapes tool, and we're going to click the down arrow by it, and we're going to click the rectangle tool, and we are going to start right up here in this left hand corner. You want to start 1/4 inch away from this grid intersection, so 1 up and 1 over, so right here, and drag down and to the right so that your square is a ¼ inch outside on all sides, like you can see here, and then let off the mouse, and that will bring in that square. Now what we want to do is I'm actually going to turn into 3D mode so you can see when I draw the stitches a little bit easier, just like we did before. So I'm going to turn on 3D mode, and you may not have to do that at home. That's up to you. But what we're going to do is turn this into a run stitch, because right now this is artwork and it's not going to stitch the way it is. So we're going to come and do that by making sure first of all that it's selected, which it should be, and then you're going to come down to the bottom icons and you're going to click the run stitch icon down here. Now what this does is it converts our artwork into a run stitch. Now that's not actually strictly true. What it does is it actually makes a run stitch out of it and keeps the original artwork. So you can see I've got here my original artwork, and if I expand that you'll be able to see that it's artwork, and if I expand this one down here you'll see that it's a run stitch now. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to select that run stitch that I just created, and I'm going to increase the stitch length on it to a 4. So I'm going to change to 4 and click Apply, and then I'm going to change the color to that pink color that we had before. So I'm going to go ahead and change it to pink by clicking on that, and this is going to make a guideline to create our placement for our batting. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our sequence view and we're going to reselect that first square. So this is a really cool thing about MDQuilter and Total Quilter, is that when we make a stitch out of this, it leaves the original artwork, because often we want to be able to go back to it and do exactly what we're going to do now, make a second set of run stitches out of it. So I'm going to reselect that first artwork, and I'm going to come down to our run icon one more time and click it to now get a second set of run stitches. I'm going to change the properties of it from a single run to a bean. I'm going to go ahead and leave the stitch length at 3 and click Apply, but I do want to change the color of it, so I'm going to come here now and select this gray color at the end one more time so that we have a tack down now for the batting, and it's going to have a second color so that it will stop so we can put our batting down and then tack it down. So we're going to come over to our sequence view, and we're going to click on the second square, which is our original set of stitches that we created, and we're going to make a copy of that. So we are going to click copy and paste, and that's actually going to create a set of basting stitches for our fabric, or tack down stitches for our fabric. So we're going to come up to our first square one more time. So again, we're going to reuse this artwork square, and we are going to now put in some stippling stitches for the quilting. So we're going to use our advanced stippling quilting stitches. We're going to come down to this icon right here and click it. And you can put in whatever pattern that you like, but for this example, to keep it in sync with the printed instructions, I'm going to come down and find pattern number 288. So I'm going to scroll way down. You can see all of the ones that we give you. So I'm going to find number 288 and click it. And it's going to come in really tight like you see here. So I'm actually going to change the pattern size to 25 to get just a little bit bigger pattern size, and click apply. So that gives us a more reasonable pattern size here. So the next thing we want to do is come over to our sequence view. Your last item should be selected. What we want to do is hold down the control key, and we're going to select the next to last item, and then we're going to skip this one and select the first item, that's our stitches, and we're not going to worry about our artwork right now. And we are going to come over to our properties box, go to our transform tab. We are going to come and click maintain aspect ratio, and we're going to change from inches into millimeters. And then what we want to do is we want to reduce the size of this to make sure that it actually sews out in a 200 millimeter hoop. So what we're going to do is we're going to change our width to 199. So I'm going to type in 199 and click apply, and that is going to change those sections so that they stitch out okay. And in the sequence view, now we're going to click our third square, which is the one that we didn't transform, because we're going to transform it a little bit. Come back to our properties blocks, click the transform tab, and this time what we want to do is we want to make sure that only inches is checked. So we're going to uncheck maintain aspect ratio. We're going to change from millimeters back into inches, and we're going to decrease our width, which is our first one, to 7.35. So I'm going to type in 7.35, and then in our height we're going to change that to 7.8 inches and click apply. Okay, so that's going to get all of our stitches at the right size. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in some placement guides for our pockets, and to do that we're going to put some little brackets in here, and they're going to be centered kind of right in this area right here. So go ahead and click your run stitch tool, and this time we are going to select a red color. So come down to your palette and click the red color. And what we're going to do is we're going to start basically a 1/4 inch up and a 1/4 inch in from that center. So go ahead and click right there, come over to this grid major line and click, and then come down a 1/2 inch and click, and then come in a 1/4 inch and click, and right click to enter that set of stitches. Come up here and click your select tool to select them, then come to your transform tab, and we're going to reduce our width to 0.15. Make sure that maintain aspect ratio is not checked. So we want to reduce the width to 0.15, and we're going to make our height be 0.37. So I'm going to put in 0.37 and click apply, and that's going to make that one work. And we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side over here. So once again, get our run stitch tool. Red should already be selected, so that's okay. And we're going to come right in here, and we're going to click. We're going to come over a 1/4 inch and click, come down a 1/2 inch, come in a 1/4 inch, and right click to end it. And then we're going to reselect that by clicking our select tool, come back to our transform tab, put in our width of 0.15 and our height of 0.37, and we're going to click apply, and that is going to make that one the correct size. And the next thing we need to do is we want to bring them in just a little bit. So we're going to come down to our sequence view and click on the top level of the last item. So we're going to select both of those stitches that we just created, come back to our transform tab, and this time we're going to change our width to 7.85. So 7.85, and that's going to have the effect of bringing them in a little bit without changing their vertical alignment. So I've clicked apply, and that's brought those in. The last thing we need to do is we need to add the stitching for our pockets. So we're going to come back up here and click our Run Stitch tool one more time. And we are going to click on the gray color. So I'm going to down here and click the gray color. And what we're going to do is we're going to start clicking in basically right here. And we are going to stitch down all the way down to right here and then back up. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom and click. Then I'm going to come all the way back up to the top and click, and then I'm going to right click to set that line of stitches in, and I'm going to repeat that on the opposite side right here. So I'm going to click, and I'm going to come down to here and click, and back up and click, and then right click to lock those stitches in. And now we have created our last set of stitches. All we need to do now is make sure that they fit within the hoop. So we're going to come down to the bottom item of our sequence view and select what we just created, both of them. Come over to our transform tab. This time we're going to go back to millimeters, and we are going to change the height to 199. Our width is okay, so we're going to change our height to 199 to make sure that it fits. Go ahead and click apply, and now we have those stitches locked in. All we need to do now is save this file. So we're going to come up to our save icon and click it, and it should be already in the same directory, but if not, go to your January 2017 project folder, and this one we're going to call Wallet Outside, or actually Wallet Front is what we're going to call it. And I am going to save it again in the WAF format to begin with, and then I'm going to click File, Save As, and save it in my PES format or whatever machine format works for your machine. Go ahead and click Save, and now we've created both sets of files that we need for this wallet project. So that ends the software section of this project. So next we're going to move on to the construction details. So first let's go over the materials that are going to be required for this month's project. You're going to need some Floriani embroidery batting, some Floriani nylon no-show mesh stabilizer. You want the non-fusible, color doesn't matter. You want some R&K embroidery perfection tape, that's the pink tape, embroidery and bobbin thread, and you want to choose colors that work well with your fabric choices. A 9-inch nylon zipper, a 7.5-inch wallet or purse frame, and you're going to need some eyeglass or small screwdrivers in order to put that together. And then lastly, you're going to need a 200 by 200 millimeter or 8 by 8 inch hoop size. For the fabric details, you're going to need some medium weight fusible interfacing. You're going to need some fabric, and for all of this fabric, 2 fat quarters will work. You're going to need one 8.5 inch square for the wallet front, one 8.5 inch square for the wallet lining, 3 5.25 by 8.5 inch pieces for the pockets, 2 5 by 8.5 inch pieces for the pocket linings, one 7.5 by 8.5 inch piece for the zipper lining, 2 1.5 inch squares for the zipper sides, one 1.5 by 8.5 inch piece for the zipper top flap, and finally one 7.5 by 8.5 inch piece for the zipper bottom. So those items that are marked with an asterisk, you're going to apply fusible interfacing to those pieces. So the first thing we want to do is prepare our fabric. You want to cut out all the pieces as were described on the previous slide. Then you want to fold a pocket piece in half lengthwise, wrong sides together and press, and then fold it back open. Then center a 2 by 7.5 inch piece of the interfacing with one edge along the crease and press the interfacing into place, and then refold it, and repeat that with the other 2 pieces to make a total of 3 pockets. Center an 8.5 by 7.5 inch piece of interfacing on the wrong side of the long zipper lining and press. Center a 1 by 7.5 inch piece of interfacing along the top edge of the wrong side of the short zipper flap and press. And finally, press your interfacing to the wrong side of the two 1.5 inch squares. So before we start embroidering, it's important to note that most of the color changes in this design are there simply to make the machine stop between the steps. So you can leave the same thread in, or you can change it if you want. But if you have a multi-needle machine, it's important that you use the machine controls to insert the stop commands to make the machine stop between the colors. So consult your manual for how to do that. So next we're going to load the inside wallet design file into your machine. Hoop up a piece of Floriani nylon no-show mesh, get it nice and tight. Attach the hoop to the machine and stitch out the first color, which will be the placement line for our zipper. Next, place the zipper right side up within the lines that we just stitched. And note that the long vertical lines are going to indicate where stitching will occur later, so make sure you place the zipper accordingly. Move the zipper head all the way to the far left and secure the ends with tape. First, it's very important that you slow your embroidery machine speed down to the lowest setting that you have for the steps that follow that stitch over the zipper. That's to make sure that we don't hurt the zipper or the machine or break a needle. Next, you want to make sure that the zipper pull is all the way out of the way, so it wants to be flipped over so it's not in any way going to be stitched on. And then you want to stitch the next color, which is going to stitch the zipper to the mesh. Place a 1.5 inch square of interfaced fabric right side down on the right hand side of the zipper, a 1/4 inch to the right of the long vertical stitch lines, and then secure that with tape, and go ahead and stitch the next color to sew the square to the zipper. Finger press the fabric to the right and then secure it with tape. Stitch the next color to top stitch the fabric to the zipper. Then move the zipper head to the far right and repeat the first two steps for the left side. So go ahead and remove the hoop from the machine, but do not unhoop the design. Now, we're going to be taking the hoop in and out of the machine a lot in all these steps, so don't unhoop the design until you're told to. Flip the hoop upside down and then carefully trim the mesh away from the zipper, as you can see in the picture here. Now flip the hoop right side up and center the 1.5 by 8.5 inch interface top zipper flap right side down over the zipper, and line up the top edge of this with the top placement line and then secure that with tape. Now reattach the hoop to the machine and stitch the next color to sew the top zipper flap to the zipper, and then remove all the tape. Firmly finger press the flap up and tape it securely. Now here's a tip: you don't have to keep using new pieces of tape. You can keep reusing the tape that you're pulling off and put it back on. Then go ahead and stitch the next color to top stitch the flap down and then remove the tape. Remove the hoop from the machine and flip it upside down. Center the 8.5 inch square zipper lining fabric wrong side up along the bottom zipper placement line. Note this fabric placement, it's going to be sticking off the edge of the hoop, and then you want to secure it with the tape. Flip the hoop right side up and then center the 8.5 inch square interfaced bottom zipper lining fabric wrong side up over the zipper. Line the edge up to the same bottom zipper placement line that we used in the previous step. Again, note the fabric placement. Both your fabrics should be hanging off the same edge of the hoop and covering up all the stitches like you see here, and then secure it with tape. So now reattach the hoop to the machine and make sure your bottom fabric is not folded under the hoop. You don't want to accidentally stitch through it. And then stitch the next color to sew the front and back zipper linings to the zipper at the same time. Remove the hoop from the machine once again and flip it upside down, and then fold the fabric down firmly as shown and tape. Flip the hoop right side up and fold the other piece of fabric along the seam and firmly finger press it, and then return the hoop to the machine and stitch the next color to top stitch the fabric in place. Remove the hoop from the machine and then pull both of the linings up and pin them together to keep them out of the way. Center a 5 by 8.5 inch pocket lining right side up, aligning the top edge with the tick marks on the hoop that designate the hoop's center. Stitch the next color to stitch the S-shaped placement lines for the pockets. Place a folded 2.65 by 8.5 inch pocket, raw edges aligned with the placement line closest to the bottom of the hoop. Stitch the next color to sew the pocket to the lining. We're now going to place the second folded pocket at the middle placement line, just like we did with the first one, and stitch the next color to sew the pocket to the lining. Then place the third folded pocket at the top placement line, stitch the next color to sew it to the lining, and then stitch the next color to sew the seam dividing the pockets. Center the 5 by 8.5 inch lining over the pockets right side down, and then stitch the next color to sew the lining to the pockets. Remove the hoop from the machine and now unhoop the design, and then roughly trim away the no-show mesh so you'll now have two sections. Line up a ruler to the seam line on the pocket section so that you can trim an 1/8 inch seam allowance away from the seam line. A Quilter's Select ruler is fantastic for this. Now, matching up the corners, fold the pocket section in half, wrong sides together, and press. Trim away the excess mesh from the lining section. Trim the top zipper flap 1 1/8 inch away from the top edge of the zipper, and then trim the bottom to make the entire section 8 inches long. Fold the zipper section in half with the zipper towards the outside, matching up the corners, and press. That finishes the first section, so next you want to load the wallet front file into your machine. Hoop up a piece of nylon no-show mesh and stitch out the first color, which will be the placement line for our batting. Center the batting over the placement lines and stitch the next color to tack down the batting. Then trim the batting on the sides only, close to the stitch lines. Center the wallet front fabric over the batting right side up, and then stitch the next color to tack down the fabric. If you want to, change the thread for the quilting stitches and then go ahead and stitch the next color to stitch those quilting stitches. Now stitch the next color for the placement marks. Note that we've shown the stitches here in black for clarity, but you can use any color thread you like. Next, you're going to center the zipper and pocket sections that we created in the previous section on the placement mark edges, which will leave about a 1/2 inch gap between the sections. Note that the raw edges are at the top and bottom, and the folded edges are in the center, and the pockets and the zipper are face down. Center the 8.5 inch square lining piece right side down on the pocket and zipper sections and secure with tape. Make sure you don't disturb the sections underneath when you put this piece of fabric down. Now stitch the next color to sew the sides together. Remove from the hoop and trim the sides to 1/8 inch outside the seam lines. So now we're going to turn the wallet inside out. So turn it right side out, turn the lining first, next turn the zipper section, and last turn the pocket section, and then press it into compliance. Next, with your sewing machine, stitch on the quilt line at both the top and bottom ends, and then stitch again about 1/16 inch in from the quilt line. Then trim a 1/4 inch seam allowance from the quilt line on both ends. Place the zipper section in the female part of the frame and mark the oval on the inside, and then take off the frame and stitch around the mark to reinforce that area, as you can see in the picture here. Last, place the frames on both ends of the wallet and secure them by tightening the tiny screws. This is where you're going to need your eyeglass or miniature screwdriver. And then lastly, enjoy your wallet. So that completes this month's project. We want to thank everybody for attending. We hope you'll use this video along with the printed PDF instructions to recreate the project at home. We want to invite you all to come back next month for our next project.